Fall, a time when the leaves change, we break out these flannel shirts, and Starbucks overcharges for pumpkin spice lattes that don't even really have pumpkin in them. What else does the fall season bring? Well, a whole bunch of new anime, that's for sure. So in this video, I'll be going over my entire list of anime that I plan to watch this fall. Also, as a disclaimer, this video isn't a blanket endorsement for any of these anime, it's literally just what I plan to watch and see if it's any good. Starting us off today is a historical fiction series about one man's startling discovery that the Earth revolves around the sun? Orb on the Movements of the Earth is a series set during the 15th century over in Europe, where any teaching that goes against their sea religion is considered as heresy and will definitely get you burned at the stake. This, of course, includes the idea that the Earth is flat and even the Earth could revolve around the sun. For me personally, I'd probably get burned alive for thinking the Earth is flat, but in this series, it includes the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. Rafal, one of our main characters, is a child prodigy and aspiring astronomer until he's forced to help a heretic named Hubert with his research about the movement of the Earth. Rafal charts a heliocentric model where the Earth revolves around the sun, for those who don't know what that means, like I didn't, and ultimately gets found out, but Hubert takes responsibility and ends up getting executed in his place. Then from there, the series continues on with Rafal researching this theory that Hubert left behind and trying to uncover the truth behind the movement of the Earth. And he does all of this while avoiding being caught by inquisitors who punish and execute anyone who they deem as heretics. Not gonna lie, I'm really intrigued by this series because it's set at an interesting point in history where we really were just afraid of questioning things and persecuted anyone who thought differently. And as a Christian, I can also respect the dedication of Hubert and Rafal to keep pursuing after the truth despite the threat of punishment and/or death looming over them. Not only does the story sound interesting, the animation in the trailer looks incredible. Studio Madhouse are the ones behind this one, and they've done a lot of other great anime, with their most recent being Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Overall, I'm pretty excited to check this one out and see how it goes since the story has me hooked, and given that Studio Madhouse is behind it, I'm sure it'll look great as well. What's a seasonal anime watch list without a good isekai, am I right? Oh wait, this is a reverse isekai? The year is 2099, and through the means of magic, Demon Lord Veltal Velvet Velsfalt, tried saying that 3 times fast, is revived after being slain 500 years prior by the hero Graham. Only in the time while he was asleep, his fantasy world of Alneath got merged with a 2023 Earth, making one large fused world, and if I can be totally honest for a second, this was not the best version of Earth that you could combine with. Now that Veltal is back in a cyberpunk Shinjuku, he plans to regain his power and go after world domination, you know, like every other demon lord in any other anime ever. Now you might be thinking, why is this even on your list? Well, great question. Personally, I thought the premise was kind of crazy enough to be enjoyable. I mean, come on, it's a reverse isekai in a cyberpunk setting. I'm also a sucker for said cyberpunk setting, so anything in that genre piques my interest by default, plus I'm assuming there'll be some good action since Veltal is a demon lord. It's nice to see some kind of isekai that doesn't just go to the generic medieval fantasy world, and I'm interested to see what they do with this futuristic cyberpunk setting. Now, as we continue on, if I had a nickel for every time I watched an anime where the main characters fake being married and then eventually fall in love, I'd have 3 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened 3 times. 365 Days to the Wedding is a romance anime about, you guessed it, 2 coworkers who fake getting married so that their job doesn't ship them off to Serbia. Takuya and Rika are both pretty introverted, I can relate to that, and are perfectly content with their singleness, that I can't relate to, so the idea of that life being disrupted definitely isn't ideal. Rika suggests the idea to Takuya and they just go for it, fake rings and everything, but we all know that they're gonna end up falling for each other and getting married for real in the end. That being said, even though the premise is pretty straightforward, I'm still a sucker for a good romance anime, especially one that's outside of the typical high school setting. And it does seem like this will be a very wholesome series that just twists the knife into my own singleness, but I will still be there no matter what. This one is pretty high up on my hype list for this season since I've almost picked up the manga multiple times when I'm out at the store, and I honestly didn't even know it was getting an anime adaptation until researching for this video. The premise is solid, and I can always get behind a good, wholesome adult romance series, and maybe I'll like this one more than some of the others that I've seen. Okay, this next one may be kind of cheating, but I'm including it anyway since it's an anime that releases in the fall that I do plan on watching. My Hero Academia You're Next hits theaters here in the US in October, and I could not be more excited. If you don't know, My Hero Academia is my favorite series of all time, and I've loved the other 3 movies that have come out, and I even was lucky enough to get to see all of them in theaters. While I am a bit skeptical on the timeline placing of this movie, given they're trying to squeeze it in between season 6 and 7, where there isn't a lot of time already, I still think it'll end up being a fun and enjoyable movie. I've been able to stay pretty spoiler-free thus far since the movie's already been released in Japan, but the few things I have heard have been nothing but praise. And of course, I've seen some of the trailers which just look phenomenal, and I know that that final fight is gonna be sick. Dark Might also looks to be a pretty interesting villain, and his sidekicks look great too, because let's be honest, Horikoshi doesn't miss when it comes to character design. The idea of someone else hearing All Might's You're Next and taking it personally is something I don't think I would have considered, and is such a small thing that could have been easily overlooked, but got turned into a whole movie. Dark Might being the villain also makes sense given Deku's genuine respect and love for All Might, so I can't wait to watch him beat that fraud. Above all else, I hope this movie is a fun time. If the animation is solid, the plot makes some vague sense, and I enjoy it, then I can give the odd timeline placement stuff a pass. Guess I'll just have to wait and see how it goes in a couple weeks. Now, listen, I'm not a big sports guy at all. I could never really understand why people got into it, and thus never got into it myself, so naturally I avoided sports anime because I just didn't think that would interest me. Until one day when I was roaming Books A Million and I stumbled across a series titled Blue Box. I picked up the first 3 volumes, binge read all of them, and it all clicked. I finally understood why people could get into sports. Blue Box follows Taiki Inomata, a high school badminton player, and Chinatsu Kano, a high school basketball player, as they both strive to reach the national championships for their respective sports. Things take an interesting turn, however, when Chinatsu moves in with Taiki's family since her own is moving abroad and she still wants to play basketball. And this is the part that reeled me in hook, line, and sinker, because Taiki has a big ol' crush on Chinatsu, which of course makes living together a bit awkward. This series having a romance aspect is what kept me reading. I stayed for the romance, but got super invested in the sports aspect, which is not what I thought would happen. Blue Box opened me up to this whole other world of sports that I never would have otherwise. I kept rooting for Taiki and Chinatsu to do their best and keep getting better, but then also felt really upset when they stumbled or messed up. All that to say, I'm really excited for the anime and seeing how this series gets adapted, because I think it'll end up being one of the biggest, if not the biggest series of the fall, and it honestly deserves that. The romance is genuinely well written and balances out with the sports side, so if you're someone who likes sports but hates romance, you could still enjoy this series and vice versa. I would highly encourage you to give Blue Box a shot since it's a fun, wholesome romance but also an intense and gripping sports series at the same time. And the last anime on this list, I'm sure you saw coming because I haven't stopped yapping about it for months, that being Dandadan. I've already said a lot on it already in various videos, podcasts, and live streams, so I'll try to keep it brief here. Dandadan, much like Blue Box, is a series that I picked up last year on a random trip to Books A Million and got hooked pretty quickly since the premise is just my kind of wacky. The series follows Momo Ayase, a girl who believes in spirits, and Ken Takakura, a boy who believes in aliens, but the only problem here is that they don't believe in the opposite. In a bet to prove who's right, they end up proving that spirits and aliens are both very real, and aliens kidnap Momo and accidentally awaken her psychic powers, while Ken gets possessed by a spirit and gets powers of his own. From there, the series follows the two as they use their powers to fight against the various aliens and spirits that do show up, while also trying to cure Ken's curse, which is so wacky that you wouldn't believe me if I told you, so you just gotta watch the anime and find out. I'm also going to give you a fair warning. The first episode is a bit sus and might make you think, why would I watch this show? This is kind of weird. You just got to trust the process. It's not the whole series. It's just the first episode, and then we move on and it doesn't happen again, okay? You just got to trust me. I genuinely love this series, and it's one of my favorites that I've read and has now filled the void left by My Hero ending. The anime looks like it's going to be equally as amazing, with a lot of stellar work being done by Science Seiru. I personally really love the characters. Momo and Ken not only have great chemistry with each other, but also work really well with the other characters who come in later on. There's also a tiny hint of romance between those two, which is another well-written part of the series because the development feels natural for these high school kids. In a similar vein, Dandadan has some of the most interesting and dynamic fights I've seen in a while. They also feel very creative, and no fight is the same, which makes a lot of sense since the enemies are constantly changing villain of the week style. This series takes those two things, great characters and stellar action, and blends them together to make a truly incredible series that I think a lot of people will enjoy once the anime comes out. With there being such a vapid hole in the anime-manga sphere with My Hero and Jujutsu Kaisen finished, I think Dandadan has the potential to fill that void and be one of the next big series that people enjoy. And just like that, those are all the anime that I plan on watching this season, and there are probably a couple that'll sneak their way on there later on, but in terms of the big shows I'll follow every week, this is what I got. Be sure to drop a comment below and let me know what are you planning on watching this fall, and if there are any others that I need to check out and missed in this video. Oh, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content, because I can almost guarantee you that I'll probably end up making a video on at least one of the anime I talked about here in the future. Until then, though, you can check out one of the two videos on screen, one of which being my review of Windbreaker and how to give fighting a purpose, or my conflicted feelings on Mushoku Tensei.